I'd like to encourage us all to turn off our cell phones during our meetings, if you wouldn't mind. I'll move on to item 1, approval of the agenda. It looks like we have 4 items.
Mayor, I move for approval of the agenda as outlined.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 2, discussion of building permit fee waiver program. Economic Development Director, Matt Liu.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Again, this is a item that we've had an opportunity to discuss with the prior City Council, and then there's a couple of you that are still sitting as council members. This is more or less kind of where our final draft ended after we've taken some response or remarks from our previous meetings. Kind of in a nutshell, the state requires cities to develop an affordable housing plan, and they also would like cities to upgrade every once in a while strategies on that plan. This is in an effort to add to our current affordable housing plan to allow with your approval, waiver of up to 3 building permits, impact fees, and there's a list of other fees that you can waive or decide not to waive in a calendar year as per budget, if budget allows.
Can I just add? real quick?
Absolutely.
The position we've always had on the city level, and it doesn't have to stay this position, but since the impact fees are associated with the capital facilities plan, and since we've always felt like you adopt a capital facilities plan with the understanding that it is accurate, the difference here with this particular plan is that the city would budget, and that's why Mr. Lewis put within his briefing document the fact that approximately 3 permits amount to this amount of money. So what would happen is you would set aside those funds as a council. You would general fund assign those, but they wouldn't be just necessarily general fund because they kind of probably come from all those who have the impact. But you would budget for that. The other nice thing about doing that is it does help us collar this. So basically, City Council decides, do we want to grant 3 of these? And again, Mr. Liu's got the conditions by which they would be granted. But then if the 4th one comes in, we have the ability to say we don't have any more budgeted funds to do that this year. And then you keep your capital facilities plan whole, so you don't get challenged or people say, well, how did you do that? But yet you can still do affordable housing. And that's kind of the approach we took with the last council.
Exactly.
Great job. Of putting
No,
this
that's exactly. And again, just for future reference, I know we'll have another time, probably next month, to talk about CRAs and how that works. There's a piece in the CRAs that allows the governing communities or municipalities to carve out about a 10% amount for specifically affordable housing. So I guess as we evolve and grow and have some fun things happening here in Washington City, this amount is not, like city manager mentioned, it's not just in the general fund. It could be from the fund that's set aside and then is being generated by a sales tax to be used in affordable housing opportunities throughout the city.
So would this roll over, or how would this work if it is spent within the year?
I probably wouldn't roll it over, but that's certainly an option.
So what would it do if it wasn't rolled over? Where would those funds transfer to if they were not used?
That we just assume that'd be part of the fund balance issue that we would deal with. Now, again, you can look at the next year, but if they end at the end of the year unspent, they're always a fund balance anyway at that point because they're just unexpended. And we would just deal with those as we've done with others. You could say then the next year we want to double that or whatever. That would be your choice.
No, I do like the approach. I mean, I'm kind of comparing this to kind of what was done at the community center with the expansion of programs, building in an opportunity for those knowing that they wouldn't be able to pay for certain things. Looking into that and looking into our affordable housing, I appreciate this is just let's give it a shot and see how we can use it to offer more opportunities. It's a good bonus.
So Matt, it says earning less than 80% of the adjusted area median income. What is that for this area?
So basically, you've got a range. If it's a household of 1 versus a household of 6, for example, a household of 1, you're somewhere around $39,850 as an annual income. If your household of 4 is about $56,900 is that 80 percentile. So it really varies depending on the families or the individual situation.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, not really a question, but I think part of this is just having something out there that people could apply to. So we can actually start seeing maybe some action.
Yes, yes. Again, it's very forward thinking, if I were to say so, as far as city council and management, to even look at an opportunity like this, to be, again, another tool, in our affordable housing tool case.
So I had another thought, and I might be off basis, but just on the affordable housing, a lot of times we have developers come in and we have the bonus density program, which I know we're re-looking at, but just reading through this, it came through my mind. What if we offered a bonus density credit for a lot that's a way reduced price within the subdivision, that we allocate, say that this lot has to be sold at this price, and then we still can do the deed restrictions. And then you get some of those affordable housings in some of those neighborhoods that typically they couldn't be in, and get a good mix.
That's probably a great discussion that we can get into.
Yeah,
at
I
a
just
later
wanted to throw
time.
that out there.
Because in a perfect world, I think that would be perfect, where you have a subdivision that has 40 homes, and let's say 2% or 1% of the homes within, or one home or two homes within that subdivision is set aside as this. I think in a perfect world, that would be beautiful, because now you've got someone that's living in a neighborhood that is kind of like to say, well, the tide lifts all ships. It gives some opportunities for the kids and the family to be around other mentors, coach, whatever you want to call them, to kind of help them, kind of bridge that economic gap and financial gap, and just teaching them a few other concepts. I think, again, great idea.
Just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah,
Let the
great
council
idea.
think
The
about
other
that.
nice thing about the way he's drafted the program is those, if we were to pursue that policy, which is a good policy, and I think we ought to look at that, then all these still would apply. You have the deed restrictions, so you don't just get this,
Yes.
this kind of bait and switch type of approach. And so it's been written well that way to cover those issues.
Have you seen this in the past on the deed restriction? Like, how many years is that typically handed down?
That would be determined by, the governing body. I've seen in other, programs, that it could be after 5 years, after 10 years. St. George had a program from the community development block grants that was like a down payment assistance program. It went from anywhere between 5 and 10 years. After you are in it, it goes away, which is in essence the mission of HUD and the community development block grants as a whole is just part of that, the home ownership at the end of the day. But you can control the timeframes as a governing body.
Well, the nice thing about that too is, again, you wouldn't not want to give an opportunity to grow equity with that particular person at some point, because that's what they'll use eventually, maybe to move on to other things.
Correct.
And I will mention one more thing too, just because I think that for those council members who were here last couple of years, you remember we dealt with the Habitat for Humanity home, and at the moment we've never offered them anything. And but they also knew we didn't have a policy. We've also indicated to them that if the council was to adopt a policy, we would still let them come and talk to the council about that, because they wanted to do that.
Correct. It's
But
more of a
they should.
reimbursement.
So they paid all the fees with the hopes that they could come back and visit with the council at some point in the future.
Matt, I have three questions for
Sure.
you, or whoever is best to answer. One is, will there be obviously an application process?
Absolutely.
And what will that application process look like? And then how is the program advertised? How do we make it known? Can you talk to me a
I
little
think
bit?
there's several ways we can look at that. I think the application process would be, if I were to suggest, similar to how I handled the community development block grant on the down payment assistance program. They would come in and apply. Along with the committee, would vet it, all the applications. We would make a recommendation to city manager. City manager would then vet again, and then the final decision will be placed in your hands to make that decision as far as marketing I believe we would just blow up every social media opportunity that we have within Washington City, our webpage, our, whatever avenues we have to market what we do and how we do it is what we will utilize to get this out.
Then I just have one other question on this draft. And again, I'm late to this discussion here, but, and I may be wrong, but do we have a Washington City water impact fee, or does that all come through the district?
We have our own distribution.
Which is the much smaller fee than
Correct, the
because-
large
Because
impact
they'll
fee
still incur the,
cost.
the Conservancy District, okay. So we have it listed as Water Connect and Water Impact, and those are two separate. It's been 12 years since I built a home here, so I don't remember.
Well, yeah, what we've listed here is all fees and impact fees. So the Water Connect is the meter
Okay,
and the impact is the impact. So we've
Okay.
got all the fees here.
all right.
It's the entire menu.
So Mr. Lou, just a couple of questions from me. How did we arrive at the 3 residential units?
I think as a council in our previous 2 discussions, that was kind of one that they were a little bit comfortable with. And then when we said it's about $51,000, they kind of put a number to that. And that's kind of where folks was kind of, for the first try, they were okay, felt comfortable with that number being introduced into, the system. So that was more or less what they felt comfortable with.
So is that the best bang for a buck then, so to speak? We do 3 permits at 17,000, maybe 6 at 8,500 or 9 at 5,700 each. I mean, I'm just trying to see if that is a benefit that we could spread around a little bit more, or if that is the amount that we need to really make a difference in what we're trying to accomplish.
I think giving the draft document, you have leverage. to
Just your
perform.
opinion.
Yeah,
Just your opinion.
yeah. I believe you have total control on how you'd want to look at. So as we get applications submitted to us, obviously we'll talk with the city manager, and then he will recommend, what is being presented, and maybe if we want to look at a fraction of or a percentage of the total impact fees to spread it around, that's
So it
something
could be
that's
a moving
allowed.
target.
Yeah, that's allowed.
And the last thing is must work or live in Washington County, Utah? Is that the applicant Washington County or Washington City?
That was Washington County to be here at least a year in the county.
In the county?
Yes, and then they can qualify to apply.
But we wouldn't grant it to anybody outside the city.
That was my point.
True.
Didn't
Yeah.
need to be
Well, not
Washington
outside the city, but
resident.
working, that specific line item just talks about working, and
Yeah.
we did extend it to the county there.
Yep.
One of our biggest concerns, Councilman Ivy, bring up a good point, when it was brought up before, was many of these people, if we had limitations to working in Washington City too, many people don't have that luxury but want to live here. And also Washington County seemed like a good option because people are transitioning from one place to the other. And so they wanted to be able to give this flexibility if we found the need, but Washington County seemed like a good enough buffer to still.
So but what about the people who are moving here? Do we want to give them an opportunity? I'm just throwing it out there.
And it's really unique because it's coming back to the core purpose is we're addressing affordable housing issues that have been applied and shown a need that should come to us and say, okay, here's the situation. It's just addressing people who are planning on setting up their life here.
And if,
Yeah,
and if
I
they've
like
been here,
that.
if they've
I
been
like
here
that.
for at least a year,
Yeah.
then they can
No,
go.
no, I get it.
And
I just,
I'll have
in
that
my mind, I was
question.
sitting here thinking we need so much workforce
Mhm.
Exactly
people to
right.
come. And they can come and rent for a year and decide what they want to do before they build. I always recommend that anyways, is because you might not want to live in this city or
Exactly.
that city, depending on what your work,
Depends on which mayor you want.
depends
I
on which
really
mayor you want to
appreciate-
deal with. And
You know, how far this can go, our bang for the buck really depends is what gets marched before us.
Mhm.
And we get that
Correct.
opportunity and flexibility to say, okay, well, this one needs this much, this one needs that much. And so it kind of gives us that opportunity to start experimenting with the need in our community and addressing it as a council in ways we've never been able to before. So we might get 9, we might get 1, I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can use these funds to really address the need in our community.
And I don't think I can emphasize enough, really, I think the very honorable way in which the city council is addressing this, because what you will find, and the Utah legislature allows this, city councils do have, this is very different than Arizona state legislatures, you can't do that there. But they give local legislative bodies the opportunity to waive, defer, or modify impact fees. and on that power. The problem is it creates a really challenge, I think, to the rest of the building community, because you've adopted a capital facilities plan. The impact fee is simply just the quotient of the capital facilities plan. And so what Washington City is saying is, no, we believe in our capital facilities plan. We believe these homes will have impact upon our capital facilities plans. So we're not going to shift that burden on somebody else. The city is going to set aside funds to keep that capital facilities plan whole. That is the most honorable way and transparent way and equitable way to all the parties involved, which is not a normal thing, but I like that approach.
So City Manager Carter, just to make sure that I understand, we wouldn't distribute funds to anyone that isn't a Washington City resident. Is that what you said?
That's right, because
Correct.
they'd have to be assigned to a permit in Washington City.
Correct.
Just want to make sure.
So I just want to make one last comment on this, and I like the fact of waiving all of the fees for one person because it gives them a lot bigger number to work with to help them with the affordability. If we're just giving them 1,000 here, 1,000 there, I don't think it's going to really help them. If we can do that bigger number of it was 17,000, I think, that's a huge chunk. I mean,
It's significant.
it's a couple hundred a month on their house payment. So
This
that's
was-
why I like the whole
Yeah.
bunch.
And this was admittedly a little bit of just a starting point, just
Mhm.
putting something together to have people come and shoot at, so we can actually get them applying and then adjust as we go, because without something to apply to, we don't know. So at this point, we really need to have people come in, developers, builders come in and apply for it, and then possibly adjust lots of parts of it.
Well, one last thing I would say too, the nice thing is this has got two parts to it. The policy can sit forever, and you might have a year where you don't have additional funds. So you say, we've got the policy, but we don't have any funding associated with it. So you can adjust the funding completely independent of the policy, and that's what will dictate the number of applicants and who gets appointed.
Correct.
So in the end, we want to help people in need to be able to afford a home.
Correct.
And you remember that and do that. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mayor?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Director.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for all you're doing on that, man. Item 3, discussion, second quarter financial update.
Mayor and council, it's nice to be before you tonight at such an early time. Thank you.
I think we should make Kimberly stay late.
Our second quarter ended as of December 31st, 2019. Take us about a month to finish getting all of our reconciliation process done and then get on an appropriate council agenda. So we're here to kind of cover and give you a review and an update through that point. In your packets, I just had Tara, everything that's being presented tonight, I just had them upload to your council workshop folder so that you'll have it for review. It's more of a presentation, so you can continue to look at it further. On the quarterly finance update, which you receive in your packet, is a full-blown budget status report that will show you all of the accounts that we're at year-to-date through December and how those compare to the budget process. So coming before you quarterly and making sure you have that document as part of the requirements with state code, that you receive those at a minimum at a quarterly basis. All this data is uploaded monthly onto our financial dashboard and is available to you and the public as a whole, all the way down to the transaction level. But from a formal standpoint, the state auditor's office likes us to come before you and make sure you have that and that there's an opportunity for you to review that. So a couple of items that I was just going to note and highlight for you that occurred during this second quarter. As of the second quarter, we are 50% through the fiscal year. We have collected 44% of our revenue, and we've spent 38% of the budgeted expenses. As a finance department, we don't have any concerns at all regarding the budget in terms of where we're at through this quarter. We are having a strong year, as we would expect, and particularly in the general fund, the revenues that we have budgeted will come in above where they are by the end of the fiscal year. And I'll talk a little bit about that in our budget opening as the next item as well. But we did have a budget opening that did occur during the second quarter. The council also amended the master fee schedule to account for changes in garbage rates that will be implemented. There was a new impact fee rate that was adopted for parks and trails. The council purchased land for dog park expansion. And then you also authorized the refunding of the Municipal Building Authority lease revenue bonds that were originally Series 2015 from when we built the police station. So these are items that the council basically approved and that they either create revenue or create expenses that have occurred prior to the last time we amended the budget. And that's typically why I'll kind of identify those items as something that has changed from the previous budget standpoint. And so that is in your packet. If you have any questions, if you go on it from there, there is a hyperlink that will take you to the financial dashboard if you want to be able to look at it from that standpoint. That's in there as well. But other than that, for the second quarter update, that's all I have for you today. Okay,
So is it true if you have a happy budget, it's a happy life? Is that right?
it is for me. But there really is no unhappy when it comes to numbers, no matter what they're telling me, so. According to- Yes,
Thank you, Kimberly. You might as well stay up.
that's what I was
Item
thinking.
4, discussion review of the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget.
Yes, so we have a proposed budget amendment that will come before the council in 2 weeks with a public hearing and consideration for approval. So in your packets that you have to review between now and then as well, I have some highlights that I'll cover with you tonight. And then there is a detail that shows the accounts that have any changes. Okay, so the items that I will cover tonight that's in your review summary covers the major items that will occur in this budget amendment. So the net change that will be is $131,772. So we're looking at a net increase to the budget by that amount, but there are some significant things that occur that we want to talk about, that even though it's only an increase of 131, you have several million that are going one way or the other. And so I have identified those in the highlight. So the general fund in particular, this would be an increase to the general fund of $1,013,752. Okay. So the major items that are associated with that change, we have the Suntran agreement for mass transit that we will pick up in there. There is within community development, we are requesting a new position that will be for a zoning planner to be able to assist on that zoning and planning level with those particular items. As you may know, we have been a city that has continually grown, and we have increased staffing levels on the building inspector side, but we haven't offered any new staffing or assistant growth on that planning and zoning side. And so we have the community development director who has still just been trying to manage that as a whole. And we think that it would be of great benefit that we were to add this position at this time. The total cost of the position would be $87,778. But again, it's a partial year where this budget proposal includes funding for up to $43,574. The other major items that are coming in the general fund have to do with transfers, contributions. So there's a contribution to the Street Capital Project Fund for $100,000 to cover the landscaping portion of the main street improvements that were approved by council. There is a transfer to the irrigation fund for $380,000 to cover the irrigation portion of the Main Street project. Because again, the irrigation department doesn't make any money. So we're funding this out of the general funds, basically fund balance that we have available. The council, again, the last quarter, they approved property acquisition. This covers the budget for that in there, which would be a transfer to our property acquisition fund.
Kimberly,
Yes.
while we're there on contributions, the dog
Yes.
park expansion, I think we're missing one number, 286,000.
Oh, you are, and it's 283 or 286 or something like that.
286,208 something,
Yeah,
and not that it really
yeah.
matters, but it's almost 300,000, right?
Yes.
And that's for the
And it
purchase of the
is-
land.
Yeah,
correct?
it's for
That's
the land
already
purchases
been-
basically, and it's already been done. It's already
Yes,
been spent.
understand.
The council authorized it and it has been spent. And on the actual budget detail breakout, the numbers are there. I just missed that digit. Thank
Okay.
you for picking that up in my, there. And then for the fleet fund, we are transferring an additional $50,484 to cover the cost of depreciation that was not originally budgeted in that fund. So with these budget changes, again, this makes up the bulk of the the $1 million, so the $1,013,000 that we're talking about. There are a few other line items that change that you have the detail for that. I just don't get, you'll see it by line item. And so you might see $2,000 for professional and technical, but they are broken out by the individual departments that you can take a look at if you want. But they're considered immaterial in regards to the overall review for that. So the existing budget that we have right now was anticipating that we would appropriate an additional $66,000 to fund balance, which means we had revenue in excess of what we were planning on spending. With these budgetary changes right now, then we're looking at needing $123,000 from fund balance. Now, again, the biggest reason for that is because we have those one-time fundings related to the Main Street project. But all the other items that are covered were covered within existing operational funds for the year that are being generated.
So were these items not accounted for before
No.
on that project?
No, we didn't have funding. We didn't have numbers. We only got numbers for this project. I mean, the council actually approved the project before we had the funding numbers. So these were we didn't get these until after November. So we had our last budget opening in November and we did not have numbers for that yet that we could put in for that.
Okay.
So, and these are only items that can't be covered with, impact fees and stuff like that, which is why the general fund is funding them as one-time costs. Okay. The RAP tax fund, the only changes that are taking place there are to reflect the actual TAP awards that the council granted in July and January for the fiscal year. And so as a result of that, it's a decrease to the budget there for $483,000. So all that just means is we don't anticipate spending any more money because you only review it in July and January of each year, which means we won't address any additional funding until next fiscal year. So you just mean all you're doing is saying we're not budgeting to spend any more than what you've already approved so far. Okay. The Municipal Building Authority, that's an increase of roughly $3 million. And that's accounting for that advanced bond refunding that we did. Basically what we do is we have bond proceeds that come in and then we have to spend them to pay off the principal and interest to the bond that we basically refinanced for some cost savings. That's what that one is. The street capital project is a decrease of almost $2 million. This is just related to changes in project timelines, that the spending of those funds won't move forward in this fiscal year. You'll see them get picked up in the following fiscal year. The public safety and the leisure service, both of those are decreases. It's not actually related at all to expense. It has to do with an accounting modification related to fund balance. So in the past, if you had revenue in excess of expense, we actually budgeted as an expense, like you were going to put it in the savings account. But what we've recognized is that for a lot of people, it overinflates the budget in terms of actual costs that are being expended. And so what we've just moved those items up to is we have one single line item that falls under the revenue category, which is fund balance. And so it'll run as, if it's a positive amount, that means that we're going to be using the fund balance. If it's a negative amount, that means we're putting it back in savings. So it affects that revenue side instead of overinflating your expense. It's not money we plan on spending at all. It's just going to the savings. And so those two changes were just simply moving, and you'll see it on the detailed sheet. You can see it. It's not in the expense account anymore. Now it's up in a revenue account. Okay. So for fund balance revenue. The capital acquisition, let's see, the Fund 44, that increased. There's your other number, 283, 286, 283. That's the transfer from the general fund to purchase the land for the dog park extension. Water Fund 51 is going to decrease by $600,000 due to changes in capital project timelines. Same for sewer, 1.3 million due to changes in capital project timelines. The electric fund is an increase. This increase here is to, again, account for the power department's portion of the Main Street project for the lighting and those and any electrical items that were listed in there from that bid. In the irrigation fund, it's an increase of the $455,000. 380 is the Main Street project, and 75,000 is to account for depreciation that wasn't originally part of the budget for that. And then the stormwater fund is going to be a decrease of $305,000. So this particular fund here, again, you've got 370 that's a reduction because of timelines for projects, so capital outlay. But we do have a proposal to increase labor and hire 2 additional full-time stormwater operators. These 2 positions are needed and are directly tied to some of the additional federal regulations that are coming out regarding stormwater. Is that correct, Mike? Yeah. And so with this particular item here, the cost per position would be $67,751 for hiring 2. It would be an annual total of about $135,000, but the current year budget impact would be about $64,000. And then with the fleet fund, that increase there is directly related to, looks good, the transfer from the general fund that's helping cover those costs for their depreciation expense. There was one item that I didn't cover. It's listed in here, but actually when I was reading over it, I didn't cover it, but I want to make sure and point that out. It's a net zero impact to the current year budget, but we do have a street manager position that is currently vacant that we would like to collapse and replace with an engineer position. And the total position cost for that is $114,125. That would be split.
Are you talking like a civil engineer? Is that what you're saying in that position?
I can't.
There's a lot of types of engineers.
Mike would probably need to get up and talk about that. I can tell you what the numbers and the position's called engineer,
Yeah,
but beyond
so-
that, we would probably want to have Mike come in or Roger talk about that. Mhm.
We talked about this, some of you council members were here when we talked about this once before, and the timing wasn't right, and with with some of the changes in the organization, we thought that at least now we propose that before the council anyway, because kind of there.
Sorry.
So did you have some questions that you
I have a
wanted Mike to
question.
address on that, or?
Kimberly, I have
Yeah.
a question. And somebody tell you, I love your tone of voice while you're talking about the budget. It makes us feel relaxed and confident. And
Is it going 100
comfortable.
miles an hour?
And-
I'm
No,
sorry.
you're amazing. You do a great job. But my question, it's not really a question, but maybe just a comment.
Yes.
You know, in the IRS offers an easy form,
Oh, yes.
okay? But we want, if you would please, when you prepare the budget, let's do an easy version, because I think the citizens a lot of times get confused with how capital improvements get included into those final numbers.
Uh-huh.
And I think it would be very good just to make that easy form for me so that I can really just break it down and say, this is our actual budget, this is the actual increase, if any, and this is how those capital improvements affect the total of the budget, so that we.
You're just wanting to be able to see operational separate
Crayons would
from
be
capital
great. If
outlay.
you came back with crayons.
Yeah, just that simple. And you know, I know that, I'm sure some of us that have ran for office realize that we need that clarification very clearly on what we're doing with our budget, because
Yes.
we realize what a great job you do. And I recognize personally, and have done for years, what a great job the city does with the money that's entrusted to them in their care. But if you could just work on something like that, I would really appreciate that when you bring the budget forward.
Yes.
The state requires us to present in a certain form when it comes to, so that will have to be, but yeah, I think that's easy.
It is, because we actually do that really easy with just, all I have to do is click on my graph, because I already break it out that way. So what our capital outlay accounts are and stuff like that. So that is available. Again, I know that it's a bit challenging, and I will try to do my best to make it as clear as we can. When you're dealing with your governmental type funds, we actually have separate location where all that money goes. So when you see me say capital project fund, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, those numbers make it really easy for you to see what the general fund money is being spent on for capital outlay, because they're actually all in their own separate capital projects funds. But when you get over to the enterprise side, they're just an individual line item within their budget that will say capital project or impact fee expense within those totals.
And while I say crayons, we're all definitely smart enough to take deep dives. And, right, my degree's in accounting. I can follow the numbers here,
Yes.
but we want to make sure that we really have a good handle on it. And so whatever amount of time we need to take.
Yes,
And this is a great
absolutely.
high-level start to this discussion, but
Right.
we may take some deep dives on certain areas if we need to.
No, absolutely. So, and that's what I'm going to say. I have it in, not crayon form, but in visual form. I've got,
So-
you know,
so
on our
where is
dashboard, we
that?
can.
Where is it, on the dashboard on the city's website?
The
or-
budget opening documents should be in your workshop packet. If you may have to refresh, I was able to pull them up from there.
In the workshop?
It looks
packet?
like
Yeah.
it was printed today at
Yes.
like 12:48. So if you prepped early, you may have missed the ledger. But there's a good,
Yeah.
the first 2 pages that you're looking at are a pretty good summary, but the ledger, you may not have had time to.
Oh, we got the ledger, but she's talking about a graph. Someone
Oh,
drill-
so
drill
a
into.
graph would be, Terry, do you want to jump to the Apple? Okay. Is it Council Room 2, Council Apple TV? There we go. It says it's online, but it's not showing up. Number 2, sorry. That's my fault. So when I covered today, the budget status report to tell you where you're budget-wise, this is our financial dashboard. And when you go in from the public side, you can see either an annual or the monthly. And I'm presenting to you off of particularly the monthly one that will show you like this. Yeah, so if you click on the hyperlink, it drives you into here. Okay. Mhm.
Okay.
That would allow you to be able to see these things for the budget. Okay. And to just show you an example here.
Okay. So we're getting, can't get errors on that.
Oh, you're getting an error saying you can't get it when you click on it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the FY 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
Second quarter.
Yeah.
Tried to open. Yeah, I'm getting that same thing. And they, like I say, they came a little late today, so you may have missed it. At least I missed it when I, this morning.
Yes. So I can change that for you guys in the future. Typically, if I'm just doing as a presentation, a lot of times I just have the materials that are presented the night of, and then you have the opportunity to continue to review them. In the future, in regards to those items, I can make sure that they're distributed with the packet at the same time. But you can also go to washingtoncity.org/finance and get on our link there. So as you can see here, I just changed my view just a little bit. And now you can see that here's capital outlay. And so of the total budget that we have for the city, we're talking a $77 million budget, and 25 million of it is made up in capital outlay items. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna just take that down again. So tell me the link that you're
Yeah.
suggesting we take. WashingtonCity.org.
/finance.
Or so, a lot of times if you go to the home page, one of the tiles down at the bottom says financial dashboard, but it's the
Yeah.
one that we replace if you have current stuff that's going on. Let's see, or I'm obviously doing something wrong. Okay.
Oh, yours will work, the link? Interesting. I wonder, so we're getting.
No, this is a public portal. Anybody can go to it. Okay.
Well, that's weird. Maybe I've got I can't even get onto the city's website here.
Well, I was having that problem when I first went in and got the error, and so that's why I wondered if maybe it was something to do.
It's right, so at the very bottom, go to the very bottom of the WashingtonC.org, it's tiny. It's like right there.
So sometimes where they have the big tile that will say, like right now where it says Washington City Live, if we weren't in a council meeting, there would be a tile there that said financial dashboard. But it's one that we replace based on what the current is happening right now. But it's all, there's a whole page for it, but I can't make mine run with the network right now. So
I reloaded it again. It's coming. I got
But-
the Washington City page. Let's see.
I can't get the city page. So, but I know, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we're all going at the same time on the
We're
same
all-
thing.
We're too-
But
we should
it's
be,
there. And if any of you would like to learn more about it or become more familiar with it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be happy to work with you one-on-one if you're interested in that as well. And that obviously goes to anyone in the public as well, if they would like to be able to use that. There is a short video tutorial on the main page that I did kind of on how to use that. But but anyway, so the budget amendment then is available for you to review and will be on your council meeting for 2 weeks from now with a public hearing. If you have any changes you'd like to request or questions after you reviewed that, then those are typically would be just addressed in the public hearing. Any items that come out of the public hearing can be incorporated into the adoption of the budget amendment, but it has to
Did you say
occur
that
at
the
that
link is
level.
on is budget?
So the,
Yes.
mm,
Okay. Well, that's good. I very much appreciate the graphs and especially information that you can drill into to pull that out. So that's very helpful. Bouncing back to your presentation, can you just help me remember what Fund 38 is? This is the
Municipal Building Authority.
Authority.
Yes.
So there's a,
So the Municipal Building Authority is a fund. I can see it. But yes. Oh, yeah. Connected to them. Okay, yeah, that's good. You can see that. So the Municipal Building Authority is basically a debt service fund that houses governmental debt. But the Municipal Building Authority functions like its own agency. So it has its own board, and the board just so happens to be you, just like the Coral Canyon Special Service District. So the Municipal Building Authority is a tool that you use to go out and get funding.
The advantage of using the funding of a municipal building authority, just like a special service district, is that the funds and the obligation to the funds sit within that entity, which means that they're firewalled away from any general fund. So if the municipal building authority was to go defunct, then they could not call upon the general funds of the city to, now you wouldn't want to do that, still could impact your credit rating and other
Right.
things. But they're isolated. That's why an MBA makes a lot of sense when it comes to these things. What they do is they hold them against the lease or the asset.
but we had a bond refinancing that increased that budget.
It increased the budget because we issued debt in 2015 to build the police station. And we found that on the market that there was availability that if we refunded, we could have overall cost savings for that. So it's basically just like doing a home refinance. Okay. And so that came before the council, I think in maybe November or something, the council authorized that. The reason that the budget has to increase is because just like on a home, you have the original loan and now you issue the new loan, and the revenue proceeds from the new loan have to go to pay off the old one. So the budget had to increase by $3 million because you have to pay off the 2015. So if you look at the principal line item, it's going to show you that we made a principal payment of $3 million and something dollars. I think it's like $3,049,000 and change. And then we had like $6,000 in interest. That was paying off the 2015 bond. And now you have the 2020 with the new interest rate. And
So
the,
that's what
the
I
life of
remember.
that.
So
Had
we
not
did the
done anything-
refinance.
What's that?
Well, I remember that we did the refinance, but I also remember that it was a benefit to us. And so
It is,
the
you have to
increase
show
here.
all the money coming in,
Yes.
all the money going out.
Okay. That's just what I needed to be caught up on. So
Yes. Any other questions for me?
Yeah, so just
Based
really,
on what
really
we-
quick, and I hate to keep
No,
bouncing
you're
back to this,
fine.
but once I'm into the financial page, I'm looking primarily for transparency, get started, okay. This looks like a video.
Yeah, click the get started one. You don't have
I'm
to.
just gonna get started here.
And then there's a few reports. There is
Cool.
an annual report that just compares annual, and they can be broken down by expense type, revenue type, by fund type. You can drill in. Down at the bottom, there'll be a table, and there's a separate tab that actually shows you the expense or revenue transactions. And every time you filter down, all that information changes too, so that you can, if you picked up a line item and you said, well, we've spent $50,000 so far on this professional and technical, why? You could actually click on that transaction tab and it would show you basically all the bills that we have paid that's making up those year-to-date amounts and who the vendor was for that.
Okay, well, that's very good. I really like the charts and the graphs in here, especially the way that we can drill into them and that they're accessible to our citizens. So I'll spend some time with that. I
Okay.
appreciate you getting me into there.
You bet.
Kimberly, on Irrigation Fund 55, just help me
Yes.
understand the depreciation. Is that because there's no money that's being made by the irrigation
Yes, so
fund, or what's the depreciation?
depreciation is an unfunded expense. It's basically you want to have enough revenues that are coming in that can help offset the depreciation over time of needing to eventually replace those items.
So
However,
what
in the,
actually is depreciating?
all of the dry sewer, all the dry irrigation lines that are out throughout the city, that is basically what the system is what's depreciating.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's really just a measurement of the cost that's going away
Over
because they're
time.
still sitting there and they
Yeah.
haven't been updated.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so again, you have any questions that come up as you're reviewing that, I am available. Don't hesitate to reach out.
And there was a question for Mr. Shaw. I would enjoy the answer to that
Okay.
question.
So on the city engineer question, so yeah, with the, one of my employees leaving, going to do something else, we figure it's time that we're getting large enough that we bring in a city engineer, create that position for a city engineer. It'll also help out other departments with any engineering that might need to be done, technical, and we won't actually design projects. It takes a whole staff to do that. So plat reviews now won't have to go out. We can do those in-house. Probably what would start them out with was taking over the stormwater end, dealing with all the permitting, getting heavily involved with the road ends, road end of the public works, transportation. So when we look for somebody, I think I'll really look for somebody that's heavily transportation background. But I would like to get somebody with about 10 years experience. We don't really want somebody green that doesn't know what they're doing. So we want to try to get some experience in here.
You think that budget opening will cover that cost, do you think?
Yeah,
Pretty close.
we did the analysis, the market analysis on what the salary range is, and we felt comfortable with that.
I can't find that line item again. So what was the increase again for that? Because there was a decrease and then an increase.
In the budget opening, there's actually no change to the budget associated with that because we had an existing position as well.
Oh, so you're not
And
you're not planning on
So
increasing
next
the
year, so I tried to break that out so that you could see this is what the total
Mm-hmm.
cost of this is going to be, but the current impact is zero because we already have enough funds that are sitting there.
for the current year?
Yeah,
But
yes.
But the engineer is likely, for
Overall,
next
it
year,
will
the
cost
engineer's gonna be
more,
paid
right?
more than,
Yes, and so I wanted to identify that if you're approving this process, you're approving ongoing funding up to this cost, even though it's not going to create a budget impact, but we'd like to move forward with the hire of that as soon as possible because we do have that vacancy.
what do we think the position increase will be, the amount that you'll be paying that position versus what the previous position was paying?
I think around $20,000. $25,000, I think.
So they might be civil, but they're not cheap.
They're not cheap, yes. And the reason we wouldn't have to increase is, we're gonna probably be approximately about 3 months of this position being empty before we can bring somebody on. So we have that balance to carry over. And then we only have just a few more months of this year's budget. So I'd like to have somebody on right now, but it's gotten very busy for us now that with that position gone.
When are you starting looking? Have you got an ad out? As soon as this is
Well,
approved?
as soon as it's approved by council, the budget amendment.
And I have a question for you about the budget. I was at the expo yesterday and I was talking to the Suntran people and they talked about the route going down Telegraph and we're wondering if we're going to have some turnouts for those stops or if they're just going to stop in the lane of
So
traffic.
eventually, when we get the route established, so right now, our stops are, we've identified our stops. We will look at the ridership, and then we might have to move some of our stops. But along Telegraph, yes, we probably will look at turnouts, probably within next year's budget.
Okay, so you don't have the money just to absorb those that would come back within.
Well, I'd probably add it into next year's budget.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Councilman, because we actually spent some time, Kimberly, on this issue because you'll see a new line item in the budget because we have now these revenue funds that are associated with mass transit. And her and I've had this discussion about how much we want to break that out right now. Of course, we've got our payments to St. George City for primarily the brunt of the service. But we also have applied for a grant fund for a replacement bus.
50%.
50%, which then the city will have a portion of that. So that could become its own line item. And then we'll have some small, not a lot, but some turnouts,
Bus stop
benches, those type of things.
signage.
So I would suspect that at least by next budget year, you might see those line items that are already being put in place now, both to account for the revenue side coming in and the operational cost to St. George going out. Those might expand a little bit as the mass transit itself begins to expand.
Yeah, so right now, we're looking March, April to actually start the service up. We've got signs ordered to get placed, and St. George's tried to hire drivers.
So they said they hired the drivers yesterday morning and they're anticipating being ready within a month. They have the bus and so.
Yeah, we still got to get signs up, and we haven't even drove the route yet with them. So we still got to drive the route, make sure everything works on the route. So we still got a lot of
Well, it'd
work.
be good if it's a month. That would be the one time my newsletter article prediction would be correct. Merrill
Oh, I
Road is
meant 2
not
months.
correct.
It sounds like they're ready on their end. So hopefully we can be ready on our end.
Well, their end is also drive the route, work with us
Yes.
on the stop. So yeah, I've been heavily involved.
They said something
working-
about Mayor Nielsen driving the first route. And
Yeah, Mayor Pike and I are driving the
Only if it's an autonomous vehicle.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Mike? Thank you. Any additional for Kimberly? Thank you, and thank you very much for your thoroughness as always. We do have a few minutes. This gentleman would like to come on up and visit with the council for a minute.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm John Steedeman. Some of you know me from pestering you in the past. Some of you are new faces. I live in the Green Springs area, but I'm here to make you aware of something that I think you should be aware of. I'm a crossing guard on that wonderful intersection of Telegraph and 300, and I've been there for 2 years. In the morning, I see a lot of traffic going by there, in the afternoon too, but in the morning in particular. And I see a lot of city vehicles going by because it's 8 o'clock, I'm there, and they're starting to head out. I just have this kind of strange mind, and as I sit there, I started watching cars and who was wearing seatbelts, and I just saw that slightly over half of the drivers were wearing seatbelts, which didn't surprise me, but I'm sad that that's the case. And then as I was doing that one day, I noticed a city worker going by, and they did not have their seatbelt on. So I began tracking the city vehicles, and I found that roughly 25 to 30% of the city workers do use their seatbelts, which means a vast majority do not. I brought this particular observation to one of the department managers, and they said, well, we've been talking to the employees about it, but we'll talk to them again. That was early last fall, and I have seen no improvement. I probably see 20 to 25 vehicles in the morning, 10 to 15 in the afternoon, and if I see a total of 5 drivers who have seatbelts on, that's a lot. If I don't see at least 3 drivers who are on handheld cell phones while they're driving, that's a lot. And the concern I have is, and the concern that I think the city should have is an insurance concern. If one of these employees gets in an accident and is injured and does not have their seatbelt on, I can easily see the insurance company going, wait a minute, these major injuries are because there was no seatbelt, and they start denying coverage. And then the employee is suffering. So I think the city employees should be setting the example. I know they are been required to wear seatbelts, but they are not doing it. And I don't know who to go to get this taken care of, but I wanted to make you aware of it, and maybe in your collective thoughts, you can find some way to improve this performance. It concerns me. I'm sorry if I'm overdressed today, but I came right from
You're a little
work.
overdressed, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
Can I address that?
You
Because
can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we are constantly, we have safety committees once a month. We have them in all of our departments as well as our department head meetings. We have discussed that. And we are concerned. It is a violation of not only city policy, of course, law. And so if you could continue to help us if you can even jot down a portion of a plate number, so that we can see maybe if there's a chronic individual with respect to that.
There are chronic individuals who do wear their seatbelts. I'm just very well aware of them. When I see them coming, I know their seatbelt is going to be
Yeah,
on.
so continue to help us if you can, because absolutely we're concerned about that. That is a violation of lots of areas for us.
Would a paintball gun be helpful? I could kind of mark the side of the truck.
Yeah, that works for us.
I
But
like the way
I I do appreciate this. We are constantly trying in
Okay.
all areas to try to remind our employees of the safety and the example that they need to be. So keep helping us, keep
Okay.
being patient. Matter of fact, I was just sitting there thinking, and I might even put Chief Williams up there and let him watch and pull over a city vehicle and
Even a comment in one of your newsletters for all citizens that just say that it's been noticed that only about half of the people are wearing seatbelts, and that's important. It just,
Can I ask-
we need that out
Can I
there.
ask one more question?
You can.
With regards to your service that you provide, how's I know it's always a problem, but generally speaking, how's not about just city vehicles, although that can be
Mhm.
speed through the school zones?
We don't slow the traffic down on Telegraph, and that's a 35-mile-an-hour zone. I don't often see cars going excessively fast, but that is a fast intersection. Where I do see excessive speed is coming down from Washington School down 300, which is a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and they are not going 25 there. And we do not have marks of signs indicating that that's a school crossing zone, even though we've got kids crossing 300. So
I appreciate
the biggest problem is the left turns, that they got the green arrow, it turns red, they just keep going. They just keep following each other through there. And I basically have to start nosing myself out there and stopping them.
So John, before you sit down,
Yes.
you're observing a few things about the city. I've observed and noticed a few things about you
Uh-oh.
in your role as a crossing guard there.
Should I duck down?
Well, I'm making you a little bit nervous, but this is something that I really want, that I think collectively all want to thank you very much. I've noticed that on those hot summer days, you have a cooler of cold water.
Yeah, that's Nancy, my partner, who does that,
and I
yes.
thought that was her.
Yep,
Because you weren't giving the waters out, but she sure was.
yes.
And
Once
you're
they got
doing-
across
and
the
you're doing
street.
the work, but just, it's people like you that make this community safe and special. And that's one of those unseen things, but I noticed.
Well, thank you. And if you notice, we're waving to a lot of cars, and it's, first, it breaks the boredom, but secondly, people are to the point where they're waving before you are, but that means they're now aware that there's something there. And I do that no matter what place I'm at. So
You make a difference.
thank you.
You know, John, the one thing that I would add to Councilman Staley's comments is that I've known your wife Nancy for years, taught with her up at school, and, you know, it's a labor of love and it doesn't go unnoticed. I appreciate it. You know, those kids need to get home safely.
Yes.
And I appreciate you being proactive in that and, you know, reaching out if there's ever anything that you notice. You know, maybe you could paintball those kids that are crossing in the middle of the intersection or whatever you need to do, but thanks for keeping
Oh,
them safe.
they hear me if they do that. They may be a block away, but my voice will carry. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this workshop.
So moved.
Mayor, were we going to talk the 2-week holdover tonight or no?
No, I didn't hear back from all of you, so I
Okay,
didn't put it on the agenda for this.
all right, that's fine.
So we can do it another day. Do I have a second to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Looks like we've got a break. Smoke them if you got them.